On May 29, 2025, a shareholder letter revealed an alarming development for General Motors, GM. The company was set to lose up to $5 billion due to new tariffs imposed by President Trump. This hefty sum set off a chain reaction of events across GM's operations. Instead of a single factory shutdown, the ripple effect was far-reaching, including production shifts, supply chain disruptions, temporary layoffs, and supplier closures, which stretched from Detroit to Ontario. Wall Street swiftly adjusted its outlook, cutting GM's forecast as workers began to worry about their jobs. As this drama unfolded, economists warned that up to 50,000 GM jobs could be on the line. The big question looming over GM is, how long can the company's workforce hold on before the situation explodes? If you found this video insightful, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Stay tuned for more updates and content. We've got plenty more coming your way. Tariffs, the billion-dollar wedge. Initially touted as a precision tool designed to boost American manufacturing and bring jobs back to the U.S., tariffs have proven to be much harsher in practice. In April 2025, President Trump introduced a 25% tariff on all imported vehicles and components. This move sent GM's finance department into damage control mode. CEO Mary Barra made it clear to shareholders that the tariffs would deplete $4 to $5 billion from GM's 2025 earnings, putting the company's research and development budget for Ultium battery technology in jeopardy. In an attempt to alleviate some of the damage, a slight adjustment in late April capped the tariffs, providing a small 3% offset if assembly took place in the U.S. However, the majority of GM's models rely heavily on imported parts, approximately 40%. As a result, nearly every model, from the Silverado to the Equinox and Escalade, saw a direct cost impact. Existing steel and aluminum tariffs further exacerbated the situation, adding a $3,200 surcharge to each truck. The pain wasn't just felt at GM's headquarters. Suppliers, too, began to feel the squeeze. For example, a steering knuckles price jumped from $28 to $36, and price increases rippled through more than 30,000 parts. GM attempted to absorb these increased costs, but Wall Street quickly demanded price hikes, setting off a cycle of rising costs, where production actually stopped. While headlines painted the situation as widespread factory closures, the reality was more nuanced. The true silence that gripped GM's plants was eerily noticeable. Trouble first began on April 11th, when the Factory Zero plant in Detroit temporarily paused its operations, sending 200 workers home due to decreasing demand. By late April, the situation worsened. The Ingersoll Cami plant halted bright drop van production, laying off 1,200 workers on May 2nd. Similarly, Oshawa's truck line cut its overnight shift, resulting in the loss of 700 jobs. Further layoffs and closures affected suppliers like Adient, which closed 2 Tennessee plants, cutting 400 union jobs. Executives called this phenomenon elastic idling, a temporary pause until parts started flowing again. However, each idle week directly impacted GM's margins, and local economies began to feel the heat. For example, Michigan diners saw a 40% drop in customers, and an Indiana shop warned it could lose half its staff. Wall Street wasn't blind to these developments and slashed GM's outlook by 18%. America's EV bet meets a cold consumer. For the past 2 years, GM has positioned itself at the forefront of the electric vehicle EV revolution. But as tariffs piled up, 3 critical factors collapsed the company's electric dream. The $7,500 federal tax credit for EVs was repealed. Congress froze funding for national charging infrastructure. Meanwhile, tariffs on battery minerals caused Ultium battery costs to skyrocket. Factory Zero, once teeming with activity, now saw rows of unsold Silverado EVs gathering dust under plastic covers. Internal data revealed a sharp decline in consumer interest in EVs, falling from 14% to just 7% after the elimination of incentives. Despite offering 0% financing, GM couldn't overcome rising insurance and electricity rates. CFO Paul Jacobson admitted that GM needed to sell 100,000 Ultium trucks annually to break even, but projections for 2025 indicated only 65,000 units would be sold. Each unsold EV now tied up $45,000, with battery life deteriorating in storage. Consumers faced with rising prices and charging infrastructure failures either returned to gasoline-powered trucks or sat out entirely. With production throttling down, GM hoped for cheaper batteries and more favorable conditions. The big question remained, was this electric dream overestimated, or had tariffs killed it before it could take off? Workers, unions, and the politics of nationalism. Once divided along lines of loyalty to different automotive brands, GM's workers now found themselves at odds over the impact of tariffs on their paychecks. United Auto Workers, UAW President Sean Fine, defended the tariffs as a victory for American jobs. But Unifor, representing Canadian workers, accused Governor of sacrificing Canadian jobs to gain political favor in Tennessee. Many workers who once supported the tariffs were now questioning their logic, especially as they faced rising mortgage bills and dwindling overtime pay. The friction within unions over tariffs contributed to GM's cost-cutting efforts, as divided workers made it harder to form a united front. Hourly workers were particularly affected by the so-called elastic idling. Though the union covered 75% of their wages, the loss of overtime and reduced shifts created a sense of déjà vu, reminiscent of the Lordstown closure in 2019. The political narrative around tariffs added insult to injury, with Trump dismissing GM's plight, telling the company to adapt or face further struggles. Ripple effects. Stellantis, Volvo, Hyundai, GM Korea. GM's struggles with tariffs weren't isolated. The ripple effects reached far beyond its own operations. Stellantis faced fluctuating production schedules in its Windsor minivan plant, resulting in 900 layoffs across Indiana and Michigan. Midwestern dealer lots overflowed with unsold Pacificas, while the tariff hikes inflated the costs of Chinese-made parts. Volvo Group North America braced for temporary layoffs of 1,000 workers in Pennsylvania and Virginia, as customers balked at the $180,000 price tag for rigs, up from $165,000. Meanwhile, GM Korea, which sends 88% of its production to the U.S., faced collapse under the weight of 25% tariffs. In response, Hyundai and Kia quickly expanded operations in Alabama and Georgia, but new jobs wouldn't materialize until 2027. Even supply chains struggled with increased costs. A Mexican piston could cross the border multiple times, with each crossing now incurring additional fees. One Ontario supplier lost $1.2 million in just 1 week due to a customs error. The global auto industry began to brace for a new era of retrenchment. Can the line restart, and when? As GM's top planners gathered to strategize their way forward, 3 potential futures emerged. The best-case scenario saw the return of Brazilian wiring looms in Mexican engines by late June, with Silverado output recovering in key U.S. plants. Production on GM's EV lines would hold steady, meeting cautious forecasts of 65,000 Ultium trucks. However, the middle path remained uncertain, with additional tariffs on Japanese and Korean electronics potentially pushing costs skyward. The worst-case scenario painted a grim picture: China cutting rare earth supplies and Ultium production grinding to a halt. If tariffs and credit issues persisted, GM's plants in the US and Canada could remain dormant for years. Verdict: strategy or self-inflicted stall? While tariffs were originally sold as a means to bring jobs home, the reality has been far less rosy. GM's plants remain idled and thousands of workers' futures hang in the balance. If demand rebounds and policies shift in GM's favor, the company may be able to bounce back. But if the current situation persists, the silence in GM's factories may endure for years. If you found this video insightful, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Stay tuned for more updates and content. We've got plenty more coming your way.